Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are logged in. Welcome to the 25th edition. Goodness, my tongue seemed to skip on itself. Welcome to the 25th edition of the EQ Lunch and Learn. And our topic today is It's Okay Not to Be Okay. We're talking about mental health, and we're doing this as a runner to our upcoming EQ for Africa conference, Mental Health Edition. If you've not heard anything about it, keep it locked right here. I will be sharing more about the conference in due time. So today we're talking about mental health and why this is something you should pay attention to. As always, I have fabulous guests who are with me and are going to help me to expound on this important topic. But where are my manners? I've forgotten to introduce myself. My name is Mucha Mlingo. I am an emotional intelligence practitioner, an emotional intelligence coach, and I am the founder and lead change maker at PTS Africa, the Emotional Intelligence Company. And I'm really delighted to have you here as we peel back the layers and talk about a topic that we should talk about a lot more and we don't in our different organizations. Mental health awareness is steadily increasing around the world, but it remains far below where it should be. Talking out loudly about mental illness is often considered embarrassing, and people rarely want others to know if they are struggling. But looking away from the problem doesn't make it go away. In fact, it makes it worse. Today, we're going to be exploring why it's important to pay attention to your mental health, what organizations can do to support employee well being, and how emotional intelligence can power our journey towards greater well being and remaining in balance. And like I said, I have a great panel here with me who are going to help me to unpack the story so that we can explore it together. So let me bring my guests on. I have with me today both of them actually are no strangers to the EQ Lunch and Learn platform. They have been here before, and my first guest, Susan, I think has been here. I think this will be her third time. Susan Chege is a true people enthusiast with a proven track record of understanding, developing, and breathing life. I like that. Breathing life into cultures that suit the organization. Demonstrable strengths in emotional intelligence in leadership. She possesses and utilizes soft power to move the organization agenda forward whilst growing the people. And I can testify, having interacted with Susan for quite a while, that indeed she utilizes soft power. Susan, you're very welcome again to this platform. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here as always. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Susan. And with us again, no stranger to this platform, we have Kevin Miner, a communications and media student at Kenyatta University. While still in pursuit, excuse me, for an undergrad, he's already gained 4 years experience as a media practitioner. He started training in journalism first in 2018 at the Kenyatta University School Radio as a radio presenter and producer for the evening show dubbed Top and Hot. The show sought to voicing out stories within and without Kenyatta University, taking an interest in young people's innovations, talents, and skills. His love for writing saw him launch a blog called Minor Mind, where he engages young audiences through informative pieces, book reviews, and creative non-fiction writing. Kevin, it's so good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here again. So thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. We love people who say yes when we call out to them again. If you would like to interact or connect with both Susan and Kevin, feel free to reach out to them on LinkedIn. Their LinkedIn links have been shared in the comments. And I know for a fact that you are going to learn a lot from them, and I'm looking forward to learning too. Our third panelist was unable to join us today, and so we will be having a conversation between the three of us, and I'm looking forward. I know that there's going to be lots of learning dropped. As I always say, you provide the lunch and we will bring the learning. All right, so Susan, I'll start with you. And my question actually is to both of you, but Susan, I'll start with your reflection. In your own words, what is your understanding of mental health awareness?
Thanks, Mucha. And again, I can't emphasize what a pleasure it usually is to just have these real conversations with real people about real issues. So mental well-being and mental awareness has taken the place that it rightfully should have for many years. I think for a long time, if you say mental well-being or mental wellness, especially in our part of the world, the next thing was, okay, institutionalization. But now it's become a part and parcel of what and who we are. And it's something that we need to check in on. And what mental well-being is about, how you are in mind, how you are in emotion, how you are psychologically. And the reason it's important is because how you are then determines how you behave, how you respond, how you interact, how you show up, and how you deal with everything around you, the people around you, the stresses around you, and how then you decide, make choices, whether healthy or unhealthy, good for you or not good for you. So mental well-being is that, and awareness of it is the next step.
I love that. I really like what you said. How you are influences how you show up. I think that's really critical because for the longest time, there was this perception that perhaps when we are going to work, we can leave our emotions at the door. We should not pay any attention to how we are feeling. And so I really like that. How you are influences how you show up. Thank you very much, Susan. I'm looking forward to unpacking that further, especially leaning on your wealth as an HR practitioner around how organizations can make it easier for people to think about and get help for how they are. But before I get ahead of myself, Kevin, let me come to you and ask you to share your thoughts on the same. As we kick off on this topic, I mean, what's your understanding of mental health awareness? You are muted. Those famous COVID words. You are on mute.
Yeah, but as I was saying, I think mental health for me, and the understanding has been an ever growing knowledge in it. I feel at the moment is a full scope of your, it could be your social health, could be spiritual, but it all has a source, and that's the mental. So I feel like the awareness bit of it is just as Susan said, is just you being able to know that you have the capacity to take control of your mental health, but also you may be susceptible to mental health issues. But I feel like on the mental health part of it is a holistic sort of system that if your mental health is not steady, then every other piece and part of your well-being is affected. So mental health is a representation of how your holistic well-being is. And if that part of your life is sort of poor in quality, then every other scope suffers. And so the awareness is that 360 angle and view that you could work on this small part of your life and it could have an effect on every other part of your life. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. I told you guys that there's going to be a lot of insights, and we're just a few minutes in, and already my panel are dropping some serious knowledge. I like what you said, that your mental health is a holistic representation. How powerful is that? And that means that each of these facets of who we are intertwined. And so it would be foolish, if I may say so, to believe that you could have challenges as far as your mental health is concerned and then continue to thrive or, show up positively in all these other facets. And so I think we are on the same page here in our understanding that our mental health is an integral part of the many facets that make up who we are. And so that means it is a critical component towards our overall well-being. Susan, I started talking about this idea of, the different organizations that we may work in. And I want to come to you. I want to come to you as an HR practitioner who's had experience across a number of organizations and, also led the HR function in a number of organizations. A toxic work environment is indicated as one of the leading stress factors and contributors to mental health challenges. How do you handle complaints that come from employees and ensure that they have a space where they can navigate whatever challenges they're facing and bring themselves into balance? So we've kind of jumped straight in to picking your brain about what organizations can do.
Thanks for that, Mucha. And before I jump in on that one, when the two of you were speaking, I was picturing a tripod. And the tripod is it's mind, body, and spirit or soul. And for so long, we had so much emphasis on the body. So, we have fitness routines, eat well, exercise well, sleep well. Then we got into learning initiatives, develop yourself. And then we left the tripod hanging on two legs, not worrying about the other, the inner being. And so I am excited that nowadays we are having these conversations because the three have to work together for there to be a balance. And that balance is not outside of the workplace. I always tell people, you spend the majority of your awake hours in the workplace. So if your work environment, you're not balanced in that space, then you're not going to be balanced in life. If you're unhappy at work, more often than not, it transcends into and seeps into other areas of your life. Because if you're stressed, for example, because of a toxic environment, that stress then spills over into other areas of your life, your family life, your social life, your friends, and anything else that you're trying to do. And therefore, a toxic work environment or the work environment that you're in is really critical to the general well-being of a human being. And as HR people, we have that responsibility to create an environment that's working for people, not working for employees, for people. So when you get complaints about the environment is toxic, you need to start listening. You said something very interesting, that the catchwords of COVID, you're muted. A toxic work environment is where you are muted, where you're not being heard, you're not being seen. So as HR people, what we've learned to do or need to do is create an environment where people are comfortable to bring their whole selves to work. Today, I'm not well for one reason or another. You need to be in a work environment that allows you to express that. Some of the things that people have been doing over the last couple of years, because honestly, this conversation has happened over the last couple of years, is start encouraging that, bringing your whole self to work. Groups can have where you actually have somebody who's responsible for the social element of the group, looking out for birthdays, looking out for births, looking out for, the highs and lows of life, and pulling the team together to participate in that. Organizations that also have initiatives on general wellness, interest groups. You can have gym memberships that are available. You have hiking clubs, encouraging this to happen in the workplace, book clubs, different interest groups, bringing the whole self to work. On the harder areas, we have policies and practices that allow for this. There's more discussion about diversity and inclusivity, letting people not have to mask anymore where they come from, who they associate with, what their beliefs are, bringing that in the workplace and letting that be acceptable. Fair practices where reward is no longer based on, I like this person for A, B, C, D, but rather there's frameworks in place in an organization that allows the platform to be fair for all. Other areas that HR people have been working on or should be working on is communication lines. open door policies. We're no longer in a world where people want to go through a secretary, book a calendar, and come and hail almighty boss. We need where somebody can reach out to you directly and have an idea, have a conversation. And that not only is good for the human being, but the productivity of our teams. If our teams have this open space where they can share information with you, share insights with you, you're able to be agile, which is what the workplace requires of us nowadays. Now, most critical, which is where a lot of us in HR fall short, is leading by example. If your HR person is, that typical in a suit, non-approachable, because, we need to be fair and we need to see all people the same. So now we don't want to have relationships with people. We don't want to be warm. Then that sets the tone for the organization. That brings in the barriers to people being their true self. Other initiatives that organizations are putting in place is having your employees at whatever level that they might be have an avenue where they can share interest areas, not only in groups, but come out and speak, have webinars, have lunch and learns like this, where you see your procurement back office guy coming to tell you about organic farming, for example. So, toxic work environments exist because people have been muted. The moment you open the door to let people be their whole selves, then they're able to be whole. They're able to give all that they have to the organization and to the society that is the organization. And as an organization, you actually benefit because their productivity goes up, they're switched on, they're engaged, and then you can focus on now how to move together with this whole individual. You are able to identify their strength areas, their interest areas. So that's how you handle when you get a complaint about toxic environment. Bring in the whole.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Susan. I think that I love what you said about the fact that a toxic work environment is a space where you're muted, where you cannot show up as your true self, and that's not a sustainable state in which to exist. And so if in our organizations we want people to be able to thrive, we need to give them that space and create that psychological safety that's required. Mina, before I come to you, let me just say a big shout out to a few of our guests. Mildred, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you will definitely learn something. Odifasi, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Pascal, all the way from Kinshasa, thank you so much for tuning in. It's great to have you here. And George, you are very welcome too. Thank you for joining us. If you've just joined us, we're having a conversation about mental health, and it's a statement that's often thrown out there, but today we're unpacking what it really means when we say it's okay not to be okay. And Susan just shared with us how important it is for organizations to make sure that they have initiatives in place that support teams to be able to show up as their best self. Kevin, let me come to you, and I want to ask you a question, and it's because we are hearing with great alarm the increased incidence of suicide in men. And more the conversation is around how men are finding it hard to grapple the mental health challenges that they face. Why do you think men find it hard or difficult to speak about mental health?
I feel like that's a good question that's constantly asked. And I think at our age now, and even with my peers, there's a paradigm shift that is happening. And so, for example, growing up, from our dads and our grandfathers, the idea of a man is someone who, and we have been told this, the idea of a man is someone who doesn't open up, doesn't show weakness, doesn't really talk about their pain, doesn't open up. And that's what my dad would tell me, my grandfather would tell me, and would tell me to be to be the man and own my problems, and be the problems. and yeah, just protect, and just be the man, whatever that means. And then there is this new idea that is happening, and
Oh, is it just me or looks like we've lost Mina? We've lost Mina. Just as the conversation was getting interesting, as Mina was unpacking the idea that there has been a paradigm shift. I know he will be back and he will continue with that conversation as soon as he's back. So, Susan, let me come to you as we are waiting for Mina. And on the similar question, you're not a man, so I can't ask you to speak from a perspective of a man, but perhaps from a perspective of leading the male force as an HR practitioner. What has your experience been around how men, talk about mental health, how men ask for help? Maybe you can just shed some light from that perspective, and then when Kevin's back, he will continue where he left off.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Mucha. And I really can't wait to hear what Kevin has to say, because it's a question that I am still yet to find answers to. And more so because I'm a mother of a boy. And as you are a mother of boys, I really want to know, how we can change the narrative so that we see men speaking up a little bit more, or knowing when to ask for help. From my experience as a leader of people, and having both men and women, I find that women tend to be more outspoken when it comes to challenges they might be facing, or good days, bad days, and asking for help. Now, I don't know whether that's because I'm a woman and therefore I've been getting more reception from women. But when I speak with my peers in HR profession who are men, they say the same thing, that even women open up more to even male HR practitioners than the men do. And I kind of feel like it's because of what Kevin was touching on, that what society expects of men. Men have rarely been encouraged to speak up about emotions, or even acknowledge that they have emotions. Rarely have they been encouraged to ask for help. I mean, if I get lost on the way to Naivasha, I will pull over and ask for directions. But a man would rather spend the next 6 hours trying to find his way rather than stop and ask. I mean, by the time a guy is asking for directions, he's in Mars. So I find that and I can only go into suspicion, but I find that men struggle with asking for help, identifying their emotions, leave alone communicating their emotions. And I would really want to hear from Kevin where that's coming from, or what causes that, and what we could possibly do to change that space to enable the upcoming men, or the men in the workplace now, to feel like they can ask for help, or to feel that they can ask for a timeout. So, Kevin, welcome back. We were so eager. You left us like...
We were hanging on your every word. Oh my goodness. We're hanging on your every word. So yeah, no, go ahead. We lost you, but yeah, happy to have you back.
Yeah, sorry about that. I got a call. I should have put on D&D. So now we're on D&D.
No worries.
As I was saying, so is this side, the patriarchal side, that tells you how a man should be, don't show no feelings, no emotions. But there's this other side that is cropping out in this age, where men are being told, you can cry, you can open up, you can be vulnerable. And that's okay to a point where society, because of how much it has been ingrained in us that men shouldn't cry, society doesn't know how to deal with crying men. Society doesn't know how to deal with men. So the same people online telling you can be vulnerable are the same people on ground who, when now a guy is in mental distress and they're in pain, no one knows how to deal with them. And you're having this discussion with my dad, and we were having a practical conversation, and he was saying, as your dad, I have to show up as the man of the house. I have to have my things figured out. If I show up here crying, all of you will be confused. Like, we look up to you for direction, and now you're breaking down, things are not going well. So that tells you that we're in an age where there's a paradigm shift. That's why I say there's a paradigm shift where change is happening, but it will take a while before society accepts, not just by saying that you can open up, but society actually trains, people how to deal with crying men, such that if I am in mental distress, my parents or my guardians or the people who take care of me won't tell me, you're a man, you can't be crying. Yet we are busy online telling people that, they can open up and be vulnerable. I think what is making more men hide is that confusion, added to the fact that society doesn't know how to deal with crying men, because this time don't cry. And as much as we are trying to, okay, for a man to be vulnerable, we don't know how to deal with a vulnerable man. So that's where the quagmire is and the confusion is. And I've been asked that question a lot, and that has been my observation, such that even when I am with my peer who's a guy and he starts opening up, I go into freeze mode. But if I'm with a lady friend, open my arms and give her a hug, So it's societal ingrained that has happened subconsciously, such that we need to now be trained or unlearn some of the things that we learned while growing.
Wow. That's one of those moments where you just want to sit and mull over what has just been said because it is just so profound. Thank you so much for sharing, Mina. And as I'm reflecting, I'm thinking of myself as a mother of boys. So I have 2 boys, and I know what I know about mental health and emotional intelligence. And yet, my default response when my boys behave in a certain way is to tell them, hey, you're a man, stop crying. Or it's like I actually have to physically restrain myself. And that just amazes me. It baffles my mind every single time. I have to physically restrain myself because that's my default response. My default response when, my sons is, hey, stop crying. Why are you crying? Man up, and I have to stop myself from saying that. So you're so right, Mina, that society has this standard or this expectation of men, and so the shift is required from both ends, right? So the shift is required from the point of view of a man now recognizing that he can be vulnerable, but the shift is also required from the one who is receiving that vulnerability. Mina, I want to stay with you a little longer because I think this is a really important conversation. How then can a man balance? All right, because I mean, let's be real here. If he is always crying, we is that okay? Let me rethink what I'm saying. How do you find the balance? Okay, let me catch myself and rethink. How do you find the balance? Because if we have said that a man must be a man, and we are changing what that looks like, what does being a man look like? I guess is the question I'm asking. And how do you find that balance so that you can be vulnerable, but still be someone who is, taking care of your responsibilities, someone who is modeling the behavior of, what a man, is to your children, for example, supporting your family. Yeah. Because what we're saying here is that we need to shift what we think a man is. So what does that look like? And maybe in this EQ Lunch and Learn, we can't answer all of that, but you can still share your reflections.
I think say for example, from myself, who's already a man, I think that goes to what, Susan and I had echoed at the beginning, self-awareness. Something that even personally I use every day, and it's self-awareness and understanding. What are the innate callings of a man? And part of that has been through teachings and observations and just the innate feeling, because every man has that innate move in them, and that's why men are likely to get more mental issues when, rather married men are likely to get into mental issues when they can't take care of their family, because it's innate in want to take care of their family, to want to afford to take care of their family, to want to sustain their family. Even though they're getting help from their spouses, it's likely to affect them. And that's what I'm saying, those innate, gravitations that you just feel as a man. I want to quote, they're inbuilt. So for a man who's already a man, it's just about self-awareness. Really asking yourself, really asking yourself, am I just being lazy and using the mental issues? One of the best advices I'm always told is you can be your average self, you can be your mediocre or your best self. Like these are three versions of you that you carry every day, and you can decide which one to show up as every single day. So from a man who's already a man, I think it's a matter of self-awareness and really, really looking internally, because remember what we said about mental health, it affects all scopes of your life. So if a man, well, I won't show up as the best man, I will likely use excuses and say, it's because of this mental, it's because of this and that, I'll blame. So that's for the man who's already a man. However, I think most change can happen for upcoming men. And that's from the point of view, such that the balance now is sort of a play where you're teaching your child or your boy who's about to become a man the roles of a man. Because truth be told, but there are roles that a man should uphold, just to show up in the world as the man that they're supposed to be. So teach the kids that as a man, a decent human being, you take responsibility, you suffer consequences, but also let them know that the world that they're in, and that means the world you put them in, that means at home with the relatives, is safe enough for them to come forward. Struggling in this area of my life, it may cause me to act in certain ways, but I know that I can be helped. Like you teach them how to articulate that, because for most men, but a matter of communication. Most men will react. A conversation with some lady colleagues of mine at Nation Media Group. I produce a podcast for them, and they were talking about men ghosting and how they ghost ladies. And we found out that yes, men ghost. I've ghosted before when I was in university, and in my younger, more naive years.
Yes.
Don't know how to communicate. So because communicate when they're going through problems, someone may ghost you not because of you, but because of what they're going through. So because as a man, I don't know how to communicate that, I'd rather cut you off and save you the pain that I will cause you. So that's where the most profound change can happen to the men that are upcoming, such that we are teaching. And as we are teaching, we are also learning, because you learn twice when you teach someone. So as you're telling your boy it's safe to open up, you're also teaching yourself to allow yourself to, or rather to facilitate them opening up to you. So I think self-awareness, you have what a man should be, and how you should be, or you even know what the type of man you want to show up as. Find a group, and talk it out, find safe spaces. That's the balance of life. As much as the negatives are always loud, there are safe spots, and sometimes you can create it. Like this platform, you can create it. I've created a whole community online, and my main goal is simply safe space through words, because that's where it begins. And words are so powerful. Once you are able to extrapolate them to action.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing, Mina. And, our audience online are loving the conversation. So let me just pick on some of the stuff that's been said before I share my reflections on what you've said here. On my end, Mina, every once in a while, I lose a word. I'm not sure, Susan, if you're getting the same from your side. So every once in a while, it's like there's a word I lose. I don't know if it's the positioning, the way you're sitting, but yeah, but we got the gist of, I got what you said, but yeah, every once in a while I lose a word. So let's go. We have more people here online. I think I already had said hi to Odufasi. Thank you very much for joining. Omowuni, welcome all the way from Nigeria. Oh, wow. Today we're really across the continent. Sylvia, Korea. Sylvia, welcome again. Sylvia has been here before. And Sylvia says, I heard a boy, barely a teen, saying men don't ask, it's only women. That's to your earlier point, I think, when you're talking about directions, right? So it's amazing how even in their teenagehood, I've had my son, and I like to think that we raise our kids to know that yes, there are differences between men and women, and there are, each gender has certain responsibilities, but there's no difference in terms of what men and women can do. And I remember catching one of my sons saying, "Oh, but girls can't do that." And I was like, dude, where's that coming from? So yeah, you're right, very early on. And I like your point, Mina, about how we need to start early in helping them. Odifasi says society should understand how to deal with all those, both women and men. Not only the women is the one to be taken care of, also men, right? So mental health is important to everyone. So the idea here is that mental health is important for everyone. Odifasi says, your man stop crying. Actually, this is one of the methods used by so many parents. So this is earlier when I was talking about how, my default, and it's funny because I honestly have to stop myself because it's my default response to tell my son stop crying. So yes, he says this is one of the methods used by so many parents when it comes to the issue concerned. A man, they always keep saying, you're a man, you're a man, as if a man is not deserving of care. Whoo-wee. Yeah, that's really profound, right? Men are deserving of care too. George says, I think men find it hard opening up about their mental health because of set societal expectations and perceptions on how the real man should be. However, as Kevin has stated, the effort put into mental health awareness has somewhat created a habitable space where men can open up and talk about their issues. So true. I think, the point you made, Kevin, about finding safe spaces, or if you can't find them, creating them, right? Kevin has a great space that he has created. And like I said, you can connect with him online so you can learn more about the amazing work that he does using the power of the word. And so, yeah, if you don't have a space, you can find a space or you can create a space. But I think to Kevin's point, as parents, we should endeavor to ensure that that safe space is in our homes and that our children, especially our sons, feel as though they can come back and say, yes, you've taught me that I need to be a man, and to be a man is XYZ, but I'm struggling with this particular area. I think that those are critical conversations we should be having in our homes. Rehema Jane, great to have you online. I'm so glad I joined this and look forward to learning. How do you deal with an employer who constantly says they can't see what you're doing, even when you're delivering on your role? Rehema Jane, we're going to come back to that question when we come to our Q&A. I will make sure that I do not forget it. Panelists, make sure I don't forget that one. Mildred also has another question, which we'll come to a little later. Mildred says, how do you convince employees to open up? One of my male employees just committed suicide after he was infected with HIV. I tried everything personally, organizationally, and professionally to help him, but he totally shut down and gave up. Oh my, that's a really, really sad, that's really sad to hear that, Mildred. And I can only imagine how you felt when you had tried to reach out. We will come to that and share our reflections, both from the point of view from an HR perspective and then from the perspective of an employee. So thank you very much to everyone who is here. And like I said, we'll come to your questions shortly. Allow me to just get back to talking to my panel. So, Kevin, I want to come to you, and I'm going to ask you two questions in one. So, how does technology affect our mental health? And being in the content creation and media space, what role can the media play in advocating for mental health awareness? So, it's a two-in-one question around technology and media as far as mental health is concerned.
For technology, it's I'll base it on social media, which is the obvious thief of joy through comparison. So a lot of people go through that, and I think more than just comparison, it's the more scientific, reasons, which is sometimes your brain just wants that dopamine hit, and what when your brain is gravitating to that because it's looking for those pleasure spots, you easily just drain into social media. And again, from a male perspective, it and generally even as a human being, I think it just deteriorates your motivation and your urge to do anything. It's like sitting all day binging movies, you know. You can be smart and schedule time for that, or you can let the day roll over as you do it. And I think that just really takes away your energy to do anything because already your brain is gaining that dopamine hit from doing something that might not add value to you. So, and I think that's the the sort of losing point that many young people are going into, because for many young people, no one teaches you how to navigate social media. Yet it's becoming such a big part of our lives. Technology in itself, even through this platform, it's becoming such a big part of our lives. And so once you hand a kid or any guy or any human being a mobile phone, and you expect them to, through their adult teachings, I was reading somewhere and they were saying a normal teenager today would be in a mental health facility in 1956. Like a normal teenager today would be in a mental health facility in 1956. It means that we still have the same brains. We still have the same, like we haven't evolved much for a while. But the levels of stress, the levels of information overload that we are going through today could not be handled by humans in 1950 something. So it tells you a lot about how the market is just perverted, and it's a perversion in regards to noise and just a lot that a human being today has to carry, and that is simple as information overload. Even just seeing a billboard, that takes a space in your brain, and you have to think about it even though you didn't plan to. So, and that's what technology is about. It banks on your attention, and that attention should probably be used in creating something good. One of the habits I've started installing is literally having scheduling social media time and saying, I'll have my lunch and then I'll spend 30 minutes on Instagram and check my DMs and then shut it off and put my phone somewhere else. It's gotten to that level. And sometimes when I tell my peers that, they're like, is that possible? But it is. And sometimes you have to go on D&D, do not disturb, and not accept calls. The phone is there for your convenience, not the other way around. So that's the one way that people are being affected in this day and age. In regards to the media, and this is something that we talk about in the newsroom a lot, it's more of spreading that awareness. And I kind of got excited when the conversation started from mental health awareness. The awareness part is pretty huge because knowledge, just information, realize a lot of people suffer simply because they don't have information. Our parents, our folks who are suffering through mental health issues, they just didn't know it. So there's a lot of power in knowing. There's a lot of power in having awareness. So the media is playing a major role and is ever trying to play a major role as also it learns, because the people in the media houses are humans as well. They're learning. So it's about putting out content or putting out information that is helpful in that regard. Because mental health, if a society is really poor in mental health, it can affect a lot of things. It can affect the economy, can affect the quality of the living space. It can affect the quality of a home. So yeah.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that you are so right in scheduling, to your earlier point, and that's one of the things I've started or I learned to do. And I like what you said about taking calls, that you take calls at your convenience. I think a lot of times we feel as though just because there is a device, you must attend to it. But there are times where you just feel like I need a timeout and I cannot. And also in terms of our productivity and concentration, I find that if I'm in the middle of something, if I keep stopping to respond to calls or respond to notifications, I lose my flow. And so I agree with you 100% that we can learn to actually schedule our time so that we are mindful of how much time we are spending on some of the things that actually cause us to feel worse about ourselves. One of the things I keep reminding myself is what you see on social media is the good side, right? It's when people say, take my good side, that's the good side. It's not necessarily the real side. And so we have to be mindful of that.
Also, it's a curated version, because
Yes.
Even news outlets, it's tough being a journalist, because you have to go through the bad news. You have to see it. You have to report it. But I realized that's not a representation of how the world is. Oh, and this is what information does. People don't know that. So you see the stories, for example, the news stories that have been trending, the Mackenzie story, the Kitengela woman story, that by anyone who sees that, and especially young people who see that and think, oh my goodness, that's how the whole world is. So also the media really is banking on your attention, because they need money. So these stories are going to make the airwaves because they need to make the airwaves. But always remember, that's not the true representation of the world. And the best way to do that is always looking at the world that you're trying to build. It's not how the world is. It shouldn't affect you to the point where you can't function. You should always take it with a pinch of salt.
Wow. Wow. I'm muting myself each time because all of a sudden today, from nowhere, there's work being done in the garden, and there's someone on what sounds like a really loud lawn mower that is making so much noise just outside my window. And I'm just like, seriously? Yeah. So I keep muting myself, and then I have to remember to unmute when I'm about to share. I really like what you said. Minor, and I think it's really important. And I think for me, really one of the ways we can turn the tide is by making conversations like these part and parcel of our educational curriculum. Our children need to learn a version of psychology, if you want to call it that. It can be a subject called psychology that just touches on topics like mental health and emotional intelligence, just equipping them with the skills to navigate life as complex as it is. Because, you're right. I mean, I love this observation. A normal teenager today would be in a mental facility in 1956. And that just says a lot about the world that we are living in. But let me come to you, Susan. Looking at the time, and I can't believe that time is so quickly flying. I want to make sure we leave sufficient time for the questions that have come through. If you do have a question, please do share it in the comments. We're coming to our Q&A shortly, so please do share your questions so that we can answer them. I want to lean on your expertise again, Susan, as an HR practitioner, talking about, what can happen in the workplace. So I want to ask you a question around, you talked earlier about what organizations can do. I want to flip it a little and just ask you, what can individuals do? Firstly, maybe to support themselves, and then also to get the help they need. So where do they start? What is your advice? And I know that different organizations will have different processes, but just generally, what can I do if I feel that I'm not quite where I should be as an individual? What are some quick tips maybe you can share? And then also, what do I do in terms of getting help from my organization?
Okay. Thanks, Mucha. And allow me to just touch a little bit on what you and Mina were talking about in terms of, the what technology has done to mental well-being space. And I think one of the things that we need to be very cognizant of is that what technology has done is that it has made us constantly be on. We no longer exercise or realize the option to switch off. Now, if you visualize your car, I mean, we switch on our cars, get to where we're going, but we switch it off. And yet we still give this machine regular service. But as individuals, what we're doing is we're switching on the car ourselves and keeping that machine running continuously. I mean, for a lot of people, the phone is the last thing they do, even after switching off the lights before they go to bed. And that light has that effect on the brain, and your mind keeps on going. So you actually don't even switch off. And then you wake up, and the first thing you do is pick up your phone or your tablet and you switch on again. And so technology has removed that option to switch off, or made us not realize that it's an option. And number two, as we're constantly on, even when we think we're doing it passively, there's so many things that pass us. We lose our mindfulness. Think about when you're, even within that 30-minute that you scheduled for social media, when you're doing that, if you're, for example, eating a bag of crisps, you get to the bottom of that bag of crisps without realizing. That means you're not in that moment. There's so many things that we do. We could be driving and you choose to read a message, or you could be in this meeting and you choose to check your WhatsApp and your train of thought completely goes, or something that would have been a nugget for you in this discussion, even as, not necessarily as a panelist, but as a participant, something will pass you by. So technology has really robbed us of that mindfulness that allows us to, allow me to use my catchphrase, that allows us to, you lose the opportunity to live life abundantly. You lose the opportunity to be in that moment. And I love what you say about even our children need to now, because they're in this age, they now need to be equipped with the skills to help them identify how to manage all this information that's constantly coming at us. It's all around them. They need to be conscious of when to take breaks, as do we. I think we work in this digi space, but then Corona came and accelerated so much. And now we're just completely surrounded. Now you can have your meetings at 7 p.m. from your bedroom, which we didn't have to do. Initially, it sounded exciting, but now it's kind of like it's just stretching us to be constantly on. That said and done, I do want to highlight some of the pluses of technology. I mean, on the flip side, I can have a conversation with a counselor in Thailand. I'm not limited to have my sessions, therapy sessions or coaching sessions, or we have people online today who are from Singapore, Nigeria. They're able to plug into information that's useful for their mental well-being, credit being to technology. Similarly, technology has come to help our well-being in terms of there are days you don't want to go into the office. There are days you don't want to be surrounded by people. But because of technology, you're able to work from home. So you're still able to work on your deliverables, but take that day off when you don't feel like peopling. I call it peopling. I just don't want to be around people. So technology has its pluses and minuses towards well-being, mental well-being. It's about us knowing how to manage it. I think that's the step we skipped. We skipped acknowledging that it has an impact on our mental well-being, and therefore making conscious decisions, blocking off time. Now, as I segue into, as an individual, what can I do for my mental well-being? That's one of the things. Recognize that you are in control of what you do with your time. You are in control of what you do with your mind, what you're exposing yourself to. As Mina said, social media it's just a part of the story. It's not the whole story. People are putting out, all media actually, is being put out by somebody with a particular agenda. Remember that as you consume it. Choose what you're watching, choose what you're reading, choose what conversations you're having. These will enrich or break you down. But the first step is first doing a self-check, self-awareness. Check in with yourself on a regular basis. Are you okay? How are you feeling? How are you responding? What patterns are you exhibiting? Then when you recognize that, hey, I'm not okay, and that's okay that I'm not okay, then what do you do? I think is what Mucha, you are asking. And in the workspace, I think most organizations now have programs that allow your medical facility to include counseling. And this is completely anonymous. So a lot of organizations, you're able to check on your medical scheme and see which counselors are available, who can you see, and the organization will not know who you went to see, and that is handled separately from the organization management. So one of the things you can do is just have a conversation, call somebody on that panel and have a conversation. The second thing is take some time off. I think because we're constantly on, because we're high pressured, from ourselves, from society, from our jobs, we take time off, particularly as Kenyans, we take time off to go and do a project. We take time off to run here, run there. Take time off to just take time off. And I've seen it picking up a little bit more with the generations that are coming into the workplace now, where they take time off to just go and do a staycation completely alone, take a day off. That's really important, because what that allows is it allows you to be in a space where you can hear yourself and see yourself and identify what your triggers are, what's putting you in that space where you're not okay. And then you're in a space where you can then break it down, and it's not as magnanimous a situation that was making you feel like I'm down and out. You're just okay, and you're not okay, and you're not okay, and you're okay with not being okay. But you need to take the time to do that. In organizations generally, some of the things that you need to do, like I said, is you're in the workplace most of your wake hours. If you can build some relationships in that space, that's also very helpful, because then you have somebody who is beyond, your colleague. It's somebody who has a personal relationship with you, and they're in a space where they can look at you and say, you know what, Maina, today you're not looking 100%, or of late I've noticed your energy levels are different, or your responses are different. That's a nice way to check in as well with yourself, because sometimes we're not very comfortable with being real with ourselves. But if we get some feedback, we're able to identify that it's time to take some time off and relate and check in on ourselves and know that it's time to make some effort towards being okay. There are a lot of facilities in the workspace that we also don't take advantage of. There's breakout rooms. You walk into the office and you sit at your desk the whole day. How about taking a few minutes to go to the breakout area? Or if you don't want to be in the breakout area with other people, one of the practices that I used to do, and I actually got a lot of employees in the organization that I was in to do, was take a walk. Just get off your seat, get out of the office, walk down the stairs. Just take a 5-10 minute walk. And it allows your brain to take in fresh air, take in the nature, recalibrate. It gives you a moment to woosah. And once you woosah, you are then able to identify, okay, where's the imbalance coming from? And then another thing that organizations are doing now is mental health days. I know it hasn't picked up so much in this area of the world, but it's coming. It's coming. And if we have HR practitioners online, I would encourage you to put in those mental health days. They are just as effective or even more effective than sick days. Because if I realize I'm not okay to deal with myself, leave alone your business, then really it's not in anyone's interest for that person to actually be trying to force themselves to take care of the business for you. So I think the critical thing is self-awareness, self-check. And some of the things that can help you know what your triggers are is understanding what your purpose is. I think Maina brought it up earlier about when you do some self-awareness, you kind of identify who you want to be and why you're doing what you want. I think if you're anchored in that, then you're also able to identify where your imbalance is coming from. A lot of the time we experience imbalance between who I'm being and who I want to be, or what I'm doing and what I want to be doing. Don't wait 20, 30, 40 years to figure out your purpose and then pursue it, because then you're living an imbalanced and unhappy or anxious 20, 30 years.
And I noticed there's a new imbalance of what you wanted and what you want now. They
Yes.
change, but people hold on to what they thought, what they told themselves when they were young.
Oh, yes. I think that's
Wow.
great. And I think one of the
Wow.
things that, if I could just jump in there, is, we've talked so much about agility in organizations. Organizations need to change their strategy, you need to be agile. But what about as individuals? I think that's what mine is talking about. What I wanted and what I've got today, I might have exactly what I wanted 3 days ago, but what I wanted has now changed. And how agile are we? How ready are we to embrace that change and be okay with that and then move on?
Wow. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. I want us to come to our questions, the questions that we have from our audience so that we can answer them. But let me just go back quickly and have a look at some of the comments that have been shared. We've got quite a lot of activity here. So we had the question earlier. Panelists, if you can just have that ready. So number one, how do you deal with an employer who constantly says they can't see what you're doing, even though you're delivering on your roles? Number one. So I am reading between the lines here, and Rehema Jane then is saying, and this is now causing you to start feeling out of balance, right? So you're getting anxious and frustrated, and it's affecting your mental health because your employer is not seeing what you're doing, and yet you feel you're working so hard. Rehema Jane, I hope I've extrapolated that correctly. And then Mildred says, how do you get people to open up? She shared a really horrific story of someone who committed suicide after being infected with HIV. And Mildred says she tried everything as an individual within the organization and professionally to help this individual, but they just shut down. So questions for you to come to. Let me just pick on some comments here. So Omouni says, true, schedule your social media time. Dorcas is responding to Mildred, so I'll come back to that in a second. Joyce has another question here, so I hope you're noting down the questions. How does one learn to accommodate an employer who's always on your back and focuses mostly on the wrong, regardless of the fact that you deliver your very best and being yourself? So this is a lot around what employers are doing, right? Clearly in our organizations, maybe we're not doing so well in ensuring that our people have good spaces. So that's another question. There's a comment here from Sylvia. She likes the peopling part that you mentioned, Susan. I like that phrase too. I'm going to be borrowing it for sure. And there's a comment from Dorcas that mental days are important and critical. All right, so let's go to the questions. So 2 responses to the questions from our audience. Let me read those first, and then I'll come to your thoughts on those questions. So Rehema Jane says, one of the features that's worked really well for me is automatically turning on D&D and grayscale at a certain time. I'm now able to take time off and decompress. So I think Rehema Jane's talking here about being able to schedule your time. One of the things I've done with D&D is I've also caused it to it's also helped me to manage myself, right? So D&D doesn't just help you to manage others, it helps you to manage yourself as well, right? Because when D&D comes on, I know that, okay, my cutoff time for me, D&D is for going to bed. I am one of those people who finds a million things to do before I sleep, and I end up not sleeping enough. So D&D has become great because my phone just goes off and I know, okay, it's time to go and sleep. So thank you very much for that, Rehema Jane. So Mildred, a comment here from Dorcas. She starts by saying, first and foremost, sorry for the loss. I have always created a training session that gradually leads to managing mental health by creating safe space avenue that enables them to be handled by an expert. This is done quarterly. Chiromo also has services they are able to offer. So the suggestion here is perhaps people won't speak to you as an individual, but if you bring in subject matter experts, I'm really excited. I said that I'll be sharing about our conference. I'm excited that we'll be collaborating with Chiromo, who will be at our upcoming conference, the EQ for Africa conference, Mental Health Edition. If you are enjoying this conversation, you do need to diarize Friday, the 19th of May. Join us for breakfast at Sarova Pan-Afric. In Nairobi. We'll be having a conversation about mental health. And I'm excited that the team from Chiromo will also be there. We'll have an expert there who will be sharing some really great insights. And it's going to be a fabulous program. So let me allow my panelists, before I get carried away, to answer the question. And then I'll come back and talk a bit more about the mental health conference. Susan, you look ready. So let me come to you first, and then Maina, you can share.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for those questions, and really great interaction coming from the audience. Thanks, guys. I think first allow me to start by offering my condolences. It's really not easy to go through the loss of a workmate. And the first thing I would say is let yourself go. I think it comes across like you're really carrying that burden, and it's not your burden to carry. Unfortunate things do happen, and unfortunate things that we are not in control of. And I'm really glad that you have clarity, that you did everything that you could. And I think that should give you peace. Now, on to your question of how do you get people to open up? First, sometimes we can do all that we can and it's not successful. But as long as we know that we've done all that we can, then we are able to make peace with it. Now, in regards to, the workplace and getting people to open up, it's not something that you can do on a case basis. It's an environment that needs to be created over a period of time. It's a part of your culture. And changing culture is a process. So, inculcating open space and safe space is something that will take time. I think over the COVID time, we did really well with constantly talking about mental wellness and support that's available. But as soon as we got a handle on how to manage the pandemic, these conversations kind of slowed down quite significantly. And I like what one of our audience members said is that, she's doing it regularly in her place of work. And that is a really good way to go. Make it a regular conversation. Just as much as we are beating down employees to go and do their annual checkups because it does really great for the utilization of our insurance policy, we need to do the same with our mental health. We need to talk to people about the availability of resources. Get some advocates for it. Get somebody who's willing to come out and say, hey, I'm Susan Shege, I'm the HR director, and I've had 5 sessions with our company therapist, and this and this and this is what it has done for me. Let it be a common conversation that happens. And over time, people then get comfortable. Remember, we're coming from a society which mental health wellness was, the next thing was institutionalization. So now we're trying to break that barrier down and let it be, a norm discussion, just the same way you'd say, I have a headache. You should be in a space where you can say, I'm not feeling balanced today. I'm feeling challenged today. I'm feeling stressed out this week. But it has to build over time. So getting people to open up is a great goal that you've identified. Now it's about building a culture that enables those regular conversations and then building the framework around it. Have your counseling services available. Have peer counselors available. This is something that you can put in place. If you've identified that your workplace is a high stress environment, peer counselors are also a great way to go. Have a coaching culture inculcated. I think PTS has programs that can coach on EQ, and this will put implants in your organization of people who can help the organization pick up an EQ aware culture. Initiatives like that then develop a space that then enables for if and where an incident comes up, then people are prepared to speak up or prepared to help those who need to speak up. So I think take your time. Take your time. I love the noble goal that you've identified, but now take the time to develop the culture. It's not something that you can do as an individual. It's something that you'll need buy-in from your organization. You need people to pick it up as something that's important for your organization, and then take the time to take the regular steps, regular conversations, regular sensitization. Speak about what's available inside the organization, outside the organization. People are different. There are those who want to speak in a group setting. There are those who want a phone call. There are those who want a Zoom call. There are those who want to go in person. Create all those options available for your people. On the second question, which was people which was Kansi delivery. Do you want me to move to that, Mucha, or should we give Kevin a chance?
Let's give Kevin a chance to answer in case he had anything to add. Then we'll go to the second question, so we have it together. So, Kevin, do you have anything you'd add on the first question around,
I think,
how to support people who are struggling?
right. To be honest, I'll just echo what, and I think she's better suited to answer the next two as well.
No worries. No worries. Thank you very much. I really like what you said, Susan, about making it a habit. I think often the challenge we have is you have organizations, especially it's coming up to May. Right now, we're very busy with organizations saying, hey, we'd like you to come and do a talk on EQ and mental health. And so we're busy through the month of the May, and that's it. The reality is that we cannot begin to turn the tide on this conversation if it's not an ongoing conversation. So I think for me, that's really what I would echo, that within our organizations, this needs to be regular. And we need to really encourage our teams. I really like the advice that was given here that, have an expert come and do those talks. I mean, obviously, like I said, we facilitate talks like that, but there are very many providers out there that do. And, allow me to put a plug here that you can send your team for our upcoming EQ for Africa conference, which is on Friday, the 19th of May, where we're going to be talking about mental health. And what I'm really excited about for the conference is we're going to have a panel discussion where we will hear from organizations about what they are doing within their organizations. And I think I already mentioned Chiromo will be represented there, sharing some of the things they're doing for companies around mental health. But beyond that, we're going to be having breakout sessions, and we're going to have one male breakout session called Man Enough that is for men by men. So I will not be allowed in that session. And that will be a conversation around how men can build resilience and how they can get the support they need when they find themselves struggling with mental health challenges. And then we will have another panel discussion for women only, one that I will be part of course, where we'll be talking about how women can navigate the challenges of wanting to be a superwoman and how that actually has a bearing. So the men's breakout is called Man Enough, and the women's breakout is called the Superwoman Myth. And so I'm really looking forward to those conversations. I know that I know that there will be rich discussions in both those sessions, very much following on from the discussion that we're having here. So if you want to know more about the conference, you can go to the conference website, www.eqforafrica.com. I think the details have been put in the comments, and the 4 in the EQ is the number. Susan, second question before I then come to both of you for your parting shots. I can't believe it's 10 minutes too. Where has the time gone? Susan, your reflections on the second question.
So, being a EQ conversation enthusiast has made me a non-conventional HR, where it's very clear to me, and I don't hesitate to tell people that the employer-employee relationship must be mutually beneficial. Everybody must be getting, it's a willing buyer, willing seller, and everybody must be walking away happy. And the moment that's not balancing, then this relationship is not, it's not worth having. That said, it brings me to what do you do? I think the two questions are kind of related. What do you do when you have an employer who can't see your delivery and though you're meeting your objectives? And the other one is, how do you accommodate an employer on your who's constantly on your back? I think step back for a minute and let's go into performance management. Step back and get clarification on your goals. Have you clearly identified what it is that those goals are? Because maybe you're delivering on A and what has been asked is B or C. If you have that clarity on what your goals are, and number 2, you're clear that you are delivering and it's demonstrable. You're able to show on A, I've done this, on B, I've done this, on C, I've done this. And still, your employer is not either acknowledging this performance or rewarding this performance or giving the feedback that you are convicted is the right position with an open mind, then honestly, that relationship is no longer mutually beneficial. Some environments are toxic. And remember, I said toxic environments is where you're muted. So if you're in this situation where you're delivering and you're carrying out your part of the deal, but the employer is not carrying out your part of the deal, their part of the deal, remember, you are a wealth of whatever it is you're bringing to that organization. That's why you're in that organization. That is value that can be picked up somewhere else, contributed somewhere else. So I'm not telling everyone to go quit their jobs because they had a bad performance. But once you have that discussion, get deep into it and understand really where is the challenge, because is this relationship needs to be mutually beneficial. Is it me who's not getting it, or is it my employer who's not getting it? Or as I mentioned earlier, we have purpose. Is it that whatever I'm doing in this organization is not serving my purpose? That imbalance alone will cause you a lot of anxiety, will cause you a lot of stress, because it's like cycling backwards and wanting to go forwards. It's very frustrating. So stop, understand what's expected, understand what your output is, compare that to what you should be doing, what you know in your knower and knowers, what you should be doing. And then if they align, then trudge on. If there's a misalignment, options are all around you.
Wow. I love that comment you made, Susan, and I am so going to borrow it. It's like cycling backwards and wanting to move forwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you said, right? I love that. I love that because we often do that, right? We cycling and you're cycling furiously backwards and then wondering why you're not moving forwards. So
Right.
yeah, I think I really like that. There was the second part to it, right? About accommodating an employee who's always on your back and focuses on the wrong. I mean, I know they're kind of related. I don't know if you wanted to add any extra to what you've already said, specifically to that one, or not. If you feel that it was covered in everything you said.
No, seek to
Okay.
understand. And then once you
Yeah.
understand the situation, does it align? And then make your
Yeah.
decision.
Fabulous. I want to highlight something that Susan says, and I want you to hear me very clearly. It's critical that you are in a space where you are valued. Don't allow yourself to stay somewhere because you feel as though you don't have options. You always have options. And often we allow ourselves to stay in environments that are no longer serving us well, and we allow ourselves to remain stuck as if you are in a dysfunctional relationship. If the relationship is not serving anymore, it has become dysfunctional, and you have the power to figure out an exit clause. Now, it may be that you can't just quit today. You need to figure out a plan B, but start working on that plan B. Stop telling yourself that this is the only option you have, because it's not. I remember I actually quit a job before I had another one because I realized that I was getting depressed. You know, if you'd asked me before that, I would have told you depression is something that Mzungu suffer, to be very honest. This is back in the day when I was a lot younger. But I realized that slowly I was sliding down a black hole. And I remember that day I just quit. I just handed in my notice. I didn't have another job, but I realized that my mental health was more important. So I'm speaking to you who's stuck and feeling as though you have no options. You have options. And then get help. All right. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay not to be okay. Just get help. Ask for the help. Reach out to someone who can support you, someone who'll take you seriously about how you are feeling about the workplace you are in. So I just really wanted to say that because I remember sliding down a hole, and I wanted to speak to someone who may find themselves in that position. There's always options. Work is meant to be mutually beneficial. Now, it's true, you're not going to always love work. You're not going to have every day as a fabulous day. You're going to have bad days. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have some performance reviews that aren't very positive. That's par for the course. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a case where every day is a black hole. In a scenario like that, yeah, you need to start asking yourself some tough questions. So I just needed to say that. I'm going to come to my panel and ask them to share their parting shots. I cannot believe we've been talking for an hour and a half, how the time has flown by. Thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned when we began, today is a precursor to the EQ for Africa conference, which will be running on Friday, the 19th of May from 7 a.m. It's a breakfast meeting. We're so excited about this mental health edition, and we are going to be unpacking all things mental health. So before I hand over to my panel to share their final reflections, allow me to just give you a bit more insight about the upcoming EQ for Africa conference. We believe that we don't talk about mental and emotional wellness enough. But whether we're aware of it or not, mental health challenges affect all of us and impact our ability to participate positively in the workplace. The EQ for Africa conference, Mental Health Edition, will explore firstly how organizations can make a genuine commitment to employee well-being, building a psychologically positive and connected workplace. We will have organizations share what they are doing to support their employees. And we will have organizations sharing how you can collaborate with them, organizations like Chiromo, and we have Minet Insurance as well, who are on board. Secondly, employees will be introduced to actionable strategies that can be utilized to navigate mental health challenges and maintain balance for greater well-being. So this conference is an opportunity for both employees and employers to discuss a hugely important but widely ignored and underestimated topics. I've already mentioned that we are going to have breakout sessions, which will be facilitated through 2 tracks. The first is the Women in Leadership track for women only. And this one we're calling the Superwoman Myth. And the second breakout, the one for men only, is called the Manwood Myth, the Man Enough track, Real Men Don't Cry. And both of these will be safe spaces to have a candid conversation about mental health and how to build resilience and maintain balance for greater well-being. Allow me to just do a quick drum roll, please, because our keynote speaker for the EQ for Africa conference Mental Health Edition, I need a drum roll, is Adele Onyango. We're so excited that we have Adele who's going to be joining us to talk about her journey with mental health challenges and the work she is doing to support others to build their resilience and maintain balance. So we're really excited to have Adele on board, and she will be our keynote speaker. We have amazing speakers who are going to be part of the different panels. If you want more information, go to our website, www.eqforafrica.com. Susan, Kevin, over to you for your parting shot for today. What is your message that you would like to leave? We'll do gentlemen first. Kevin, you can share your parting shot, and then we'll close off with you, Susan.
I think my parting shot would be a summary of what we've talked about, and to begin with saying, it's okay not to be okay, and self-awareness or awareness in general precedes change. So you may listen to all these things, you may listen to all the advice, all the tips and tactics, but without that awareness, nothing much will happen. So begin from there and then work your way back from where you are now, knowing where you want to be.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Susan, before you share, allow me just to give a special shout out, my little sister who's tuned in all the way from the UK. Hey, Ida, thank you for joining us today. Susan, over to you.
Hey, Ida. And all our lovely audience members. It's been great. I'll start similarly to mine and say it's okay to not be okay. And I'll take it a bit further and say it's even more okay to visibly be not okay. When we put ourselves out there, we are now getting into that space where we're creating safe spaces for others to be okay with not being okay. And it creates a platform for dialogue, which is not only helpful for ourselves, but also helpful for others. When we create those opportunities to have those conversations, then we have chances to kind of unwrap or get into what is it that is really under the not being okay, which is okay. I think a big part of EQ is being vulnerable, being okay with who you are, what space you're in now, being able to identify it, to verbalize it, to walk through how it's going to affect what you're going to decide on, what you're going to do, how you're going to respond. And as leaders, I challenge all of us to try and be okay with not being okay visibly. It's great to come out here and talk about it, but how are we living it? Are we okay with saying, hey, team, I'm really great with everything that you're doing, but today I'm having one of those days and I'm just going to switch off for the next 2-3 hours and then we can pick this up. That is so powerful to that team, because tomorrow, if it's a member of your team who's in that space, they're able to step out and say, this is how I am. I'm amber, or I'm red, or I'm green today. By putting yourself out there, you're walking the walk of mental wellness and mental health issues. I think when we talk about expressing ourselves and expressing our mental health challenges, the next step is what Maina brought out. Then what? Are we prepared to respond? How do we respond to situations where people show that vulnerability? I think that came out for me today, is we talk about it, we encourage it, but then when it happens, how are we responding? Are we labeling people? Are we passing people, oh, that one is weak, let's not give additional responsibility. Oh, I can't go on a date with him. I think I saw him breaking down the other day. Or, I can't send them on this work trip because I don't know what responses they'll have. How are we responding? Are we punishing people for doing exactly what we've asked them to do, which is speak up about their mental health? So let's be vulnerable. Let's walk the talk, and then let's be prepared. Let's respond. Let's support adequately. And if we don't know how, step up and say, I don't know how to deal with this situation. How can I handle this?
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. What an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you so much, Kevin. You've really, really broken this down. And it's been an honor to have you on this platform and having this conversation. Thank you very much for your time. Allow me to let my panelists go back to the work that they do. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Kevin. And allow you to get back to your work as well. I know and I trust that you've been able to have your lunch as you've been tuned in with us. As I always say, we brought the learning. I hope that you enjoyed your lunch. Take care, and thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget the EQ for Africa conference, Friday the 19th of May in Nairobi, and diarize the last Wednesday of every month for this EQ Lunch and Learn. Goodbye. God bless you all.